everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenny. I'm here today to do a review of Black Lion, Alive in the Wilderness by Sicelo and Mbatha. And this was a book that I read on while I was in South Africa, and it is set in South Africa. Sicelo is from the Zulu tribe, which is on the eastern side of South Africa, and he grew up in a rural town, a rural village, very close to the land. And that kind of philosophy, that kind of way of looking at the world is very much shared in this memoir. So I would say this is kind of a memoir combined with a biography, because it does go in chronological order. He talks you through his childhood, in which he had a very traumatic experience, which kind of informed later his relationship with nature. And he's also a deeply spiritual person, which I found to be a wonderful perspective to read about. So he wrote this with Bridget Pitt, who's kind of supported him, I think helped with the narrative. And I really liked the way he split the story up into the different sections of his life, the way he explained the scenarios of his situation, which was very much a storyline that I don't think you read a lot about, which is an African man who did not come from affluence, came from a small village, and who had to fight against the repercussions of colonialism that still exist in South Africa today, that made it really difficult for him to pursue his passion, which was to become a ranger, which is, if in case you don't know, rangers are usually people that work in the national parks or work on private game reserves and lead people through nature experiences. And so that's what Sicelo trained to do, but he had to do it in not the conventional way that a lot of white rangers would have, and those circumstances are outlined in the book. And he also felt that he didn't want to be part of a system that was kind of perpetuating colonial mindsets and capitalist views of the wilderness and of nature. And so he very much found his own path, and that took him many years, and he describes that in here. There's also beautiful nature writing. He has many encounters with different animals, many encounters just being out in the wilderness, because the wilderness trips that he leads are ones that are done on foot. So a lot of the time, and myself included, when I was in South Africa, when I went into the nature preserves, we did all of our exploring on trucks, on off-road vehicles that would drive through roads to see the animals. Whereas Sicelo's work and his organization now leads people through on foot trails. And so it's a whole different way of encountering animals, of being one with nature. It's much more of a rough, like camping in the ground and sleeping under the stars type of adventure. And so a lot of people do that as a kind of healing and catharsis from some trauma that they've gone through in their lives. And so some of those stories are also relayed in this book. So why I wanted to do a review of this is because I really don't think that books like this are abundant out there. I don't think you get a lot of rural South African perspectives from Zulu culture or from any Black cultures. I think that these stories are the stories that need to be promoted and that need to be told, because what they're doing is they are adding to the diversity of voices encountering nature. I think when you're talking about environmental or nature writing, you have a lot of westernized perspectives, settler colonial perspectives, and this is not that. And so I think if you enjoy nature writing, and if you are looking to broaden your perspective and bring in more diverse voices, I would definitely recommend you read this one. I loved being in the South African bush and reading about the South African bush at the same time. I think Sicelo's way of looking at the world is very different from my own. I did grow up on a farm, but now I live in the city, and I would never not want to be near a city, but his perspective about the city is very different. He finds it doesn't suit his personality, and I enjoyed like learning about that and why. Learning about the work and what he's trying to do, because a lot of the time too, he explains a lot of the colonial repercussions and capitalist structure that is set up in South Africa now that is keeping the wealth away from Black African people. So part of that is the system of private game reserves, where rich people buy up a whole bunch of land, they fence it off to keep the animals inside, and African people who live there, whose ancestors have always lived there, don't have access to these animals. They don't get to see them. They don't know what they look like. They don't get to be part of the wider breadth of nature around them, because it's all being fenced off for profit. So, and in some cases, it's also being fenced off to prevent poachers and different things like that. So it's definitely very complex. And I think Sicelo does a really good job of explaining the complexity and the layers of conservation, of nature conservation, he even tells a poacher story. And I really felt that helped me to understand more layers and more complexity to South Africa in general, but also to the way that African safaris are presented to Western people, certainly, but anyone colonial. And I think that the same can definitely be applied to nature reserves in North America as well, because the whole conservation movement, while it seems to be very positive because you're trying to protect land, you're trying to preserve the animals on it, there's also an element of who gets to see those things. And so who are you preserving it for? And who doesn't have access to those things? And who are you preventing from having access? And how it's growing some people's wealth while it's keeping the disconnect between people and indigenous cultures who have been living on that land and interacting with those animals for centuries. You're removing their access. So it's a really, really well done, interesting perspective that I would highly, highly recommend that you check out if you like nature writing. Black Lion, Alive in the Wilderness by Sicelo Mbatha. And I will be back again soon with another video. Thank you so much for watching.